Welcome to the 8th part in this video series on creating atmospheric night images in VRay for Rhino. In this video we're going to be looking at adding in artificial lighting into our scene to create a sense of drama and atmosphere. To begin with, we're going to be starting off where we left in our last video. We've added in some natural elements like the flowers and the grass to this scene, and we're now going to be adding in some lighting into the main structure. Now if you're finding that the file is a little bit slow, now we've added in this scatter geometry, we can speed this up by lowering the amount of objects we can see in this preview. To do this, we just open up the VRay asset editor, like so, find our geometry tab, find the scattered flowers we have here, and under this percentage preview, we're just going to lower this from 100% down to 10. And that way the preview of this is slightly less. It will still render exactly the same with the same amount of geometry, but just while we're previewing it in the file like this, it will be less, and this will allow us to kind of rotate a little bit faster around the model, like so. Now we're going to begin by adding in some artificial lights into this main structure. And to do this, we're going to be using the lighting tool, which is found under our VRay lighting tools, which are here. These are just these orange icons in the kind of VRay toolbar here, or we can find it under VRay, VRay lights, and here are all the lights we have on offer. Now we're going to begin with the sphere light, which is just this circular light here, and we're just going to select that and just draw out a sphere in the scene. Now I'm going to try and get it in this gap here, so we don't want it too big. I think about there, it's good. And once we've done that, we'll just select that sphere. You'll usually find you have to click it in the center in order to select it, like so, and we'll just move it up into view. Now let's just move it out of the building for now so we can preview it, and we'll just open up the VRay frame buffer, minimize it slightly so we can see our view here, make sure we're selecting our camera view, and then let's do a little test render to see how this is currently looking. Now, as this starts to load, we'll see that we're going to have our sphere sort of rendered in our scene, like so. There we go. And we've got this kind of big glowing ball of light. Now, in order to now try and sort of adjust the parameters of this light to make it look sort of nicer within the scene, we can open up our VRay asset editor as well, and we'll just pull this over here. And here you can see the light we've created. So when we make a light, we've got sphere light here, and we can dial in the color and the intensity of that light. Now what I'll usually do is under the color, if we're using kind of lighting we want inside a building, I'll make it a little bit warmer just by kind of going to the yellow or orange color and just taking it slightly off white so we get a slight warmth in there. You don't want it too high because it comes really orangey there, but you just want it slightly off white to give a little bit of warmth into that scene. It might be as well that it's quite intense and quite bright in your scene, so you can always lower this intensity value to a more suitable amount that suits your scene. Now for this first light, I actually want this to be inside the building, so let's just minimize my asset editor, and we're just going to move the light while we've got our render preview on so we can see it as we move it inside. Let's move it up a bit, and I'm just using the gumball for this and moving it inside the structure, like so. Now it might be that you don't want to see the ball of light, you just want the lighting effect, and this is usually the case majority of the time when using these lights, that I don't really want a big glowing ball in the scene, I just want the lighting effect from that object. So in order to do that, if we open up the VRay asset editor again, and under that same light, in this options tab, we can make it invisible by ticking that invisibility option there. I'll usually tick that and also tick off the effect reflections, and you'll see here that with that on we can see that ball reflected in the water, but with it off we don't get the reflection. So we're just getting the lighting from that effect, and there you can see it's glowing on the inside of that building there. Now what we can also do is once we've made one of these, we can copy it. I'm just going to kind of move it along inside this part of the building too. And once you've got it, we can always move that piece in. And if you make a copy of a light, it will share the properties of the first light you've made. So you see here we've now got it glowing on the right hand side of that building too. And if I open up my asset editor here, we've still only got one light. So both of these lights we've made are controlled by this one light in the asset editor. So if we up the percentage of the intensity there, we're getting a higher glow in there. And if we lower it, we're getting it lower. So I'm going to put this around a 15, I think. I think that's kind of looking nice for a nice sort of interior glow. It might be now that with the glass it's not quite looking as green as I want it, so you might find when you add in your lights you might need to go back and change some of your material properties in order to work correctly with these lights you've added. For this particular glass here, I'm just going to go back to my materials, find my glass, like so, and under the refraction, because at the moment when it becomes see-through with the light behind, it loses that green colour, so in the refraction colour I'm just going to go to the green and just make it a bit more green. And you can see here, the more I do that, the kind of greener it will become. I don't want it too vivid, but maybe sort of somewhere in between there. I want it kind of a nice sort of bottle green there. And I think that's looking nice. So that's the kind of initial lighting we've done inside our object there. And now we've got that kind of initial light, we might want to add a few more lights to light up different areas of the building. Now this is completely up to you how you do this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a light in this central atrium here to give a bit of glow. I'm going to make a new light and not copy one of my previous ones because I want it to be independent from those lights inside the building. So we're just going to draw it out like so, about there, make it that sort of size, and then let's just move it upwards into this main core of the building. Same again, I don't want that big sphere visible, so we're just going to go back to the properties. You'll find now we've made a new light, it's going to be called light 1. You can always name these lights if you want to kind of locate them later to make them easier to locate. So I'm going to call this atrium, and we're going to make it invisible again and invisible in the reflections, and then we're going to make it slightly warmer too. And I think as well we're just going to make it a little bit less intense. I think around a 10 is quite nice. So, and it might be that we want to just raise it up slightly. I just want to give a bit of glow to that central space, like so. So I think that's working quite nicely for what I have in mind. As well as sphere lights, we can also use other type of lights to light up our scene. And I've got this kind of long corridor on the left hand side of the model here. And to light that, I'm actually going to use what's called a rectangle light, which is a slightly different shape we can find in the light tools to give us a rectangular light to light this piece. So in order to create this, let's just minimize the frame buffer for now. We're going to select that rectangle light. I'm actually going to look at it in the top view, and we're just going to draw it down here. And you can just draw this out just like you draw out any other rectangle or kind of box shape in Rhino. Once we've made it, let's open up our frame buffer again, and we can now move it into location. And we're just going to kind of put it in this little corridor here, make sure we're zoom selected so we can see it clearly. And then let's just raise it up so it's at the top of this piece. So it's just casting light kind of downwards in there, and there you can see it in our kind of corridor. Same again, this looks to be very bright, so we'll find that rectangle light, make it invisible, and then lower that intensity right down to about a 10, and change the colour to be a slightly warm colour as well. So sort of similar tricks we're doing for each of these. You might find for some lights we need to lower them even more, maybe a 10 slightly too high there, so maybe let's put that as a 5, and I'm going to turn off the reflections again. I just want a kind of subtle glow in each of these spaces, really. And we can check that that's kind of in a nice location. Just move that across a bit, just so it's glowing down in there. And I think that's giving us a kind of nice ambient glow in there. So now we've got our kind of core lights in our view, as we can see here. We've got a kind of main light in the building, light in the corridor and in this atrium. And I also have these round windows here that we kind of want to add a few lights in just to make these kind of lit up, to make it look like there's some life inside them. Now let's just pause the render for now, because we're going to need to do a little bit of modelling to make the lights in this space work. As we can see up here, we haven't got a kind of structure between them, so if I add a light behind these little windows, it's just going to light up this whole area and not that specific window. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make a little bit of structure around them to encase that light in there. So we're just going to select these walls, the roof and this back wall here, and we're going to go on our visibility tab and isolate these objects so we can just see these. to make this piece. Then I'm going to use the extrude tool, and we're going to select the extrude surface here. We're going to select our kind of top surface there, hit enter, and extrude this up to kind of encase our windows like so. So we've kind of made a little box around that window piece. Now at the moment it's modeling it in the glass layer. I want this to be part of the walls, so we're just going to go to the properties, under layer, and switch this to walls like so. Now we've got this, I'm going to then select that object and type in explode to break it into its multiple parts, and then where we've got this pieces masking the window, we're just going to delete those out. So what you'll see here is I'm deleting those bits out, so we're making this kind of cavity behind the windows, which will allow us to put a light in here to shine through so we can see it. Now it might be we've got this little bit of excess here, so what I'm going to do with that is let's just quickly create a plane on this back surface here, select that plane, use the trim tool like so, and just use it to trim off these extra edges we've got here just to tidy up that bit of the model. So you can see we've just made a little bit of thickness around those windows, and inside it's now got a kind of cavity in there that we can put lights in, and that will mean those lights are kind of encased behind that particular window piece. So now we've done that, we can select the objects again, go back to our visibility tools, and we're going to unisolate them by right clicking on this tool here to bring us back to the main scene. We're then in the top view, we're going to make a tiny light to go behind this window, so we're just going to select our sphere light again, zoom in on the window, and I'm just going to kind of draw out a really small light like this kind of size to go behind that window. We're then going to move this downwards to sit just behind that window piece like so there. And once we've done that, let's open up our VRay frame buffer again, make that a little bit smaller so we can see it, make sure we're in our kind of main camera view here, and let's render that out to see how that's looking behind that window now we've added that piece of geometry. So there we can see it's just loading up, and now you can see we're getting this little highlight where that window and that light is coming through. So what we can do now, as we have done before, is just make sure with that sphere light, and we'll just call this window, or round window maybe. So we remember, we can lower that intensity down, we can adjust the colour slightly to make it a bit warmer, and I'm also going to make it invisible and turn off that reflection as well. So we're just getting the glow from there. So you can see we've got that kind of nice glow coming in from the window. You might even, when the light is smaller, it might need to be slightly more intense. You'll find that the intensity is dependent on the size of the light as well. So actually I'm going to make that, maybe let's make that around a 20 there. I think that should be a nice amount. And once we've got that, I'm going to copy that to all of those windows as well. So we'll just select the light like so, use the copy tool, snap a point on our kind of window frame here, and then we'll just scroll along and copy it behind each of these windows like so. So we're then lighting up all of these points behind our structure. There we go. And there you can see in the preview we've now got those nice little glowing round windows at the top of our scene as well. So now we've kind of added in our main lights to the building. We're going to just finish this by just adding in a few more lights to the environment to really make this kind of atmospheric and glow a little bit more. Now the first thing I'm going to do to this is I'm actually going to dim down the environment lighting. It's still quite bright on the outside of the building, and I want it to be a little bit darker so it looks a little bit more dusky in the scene. So to do this, we'll just open up our asset editor again, go into the settings, and then under this environment and background you'll see I've got it on a 0.2. I'm just going to lower that to a 0.1 so it's slightly dimmer, and you'll see there that the whole building gets a little bit darker. Now to compensate for this, we're going to add in a few more environmental lights, but we're going to colour these to add a little bit of atmosphere to the scene. So to do this, we're going to select the sphere light tool again. We're just going to sort of zoom out on our structure, and we're going to draw quite a big light out just to the edge of the file here. Now we don't want this visible as it currently is in the view. So I'm just going to take it and move it out of the scene. So it's just kind of off camera, as it were, here. What we're then going to do is we're going to kind of locate that light, which is this new one here. We'll call it environment light, sort of number 1. And I think let's kind of play around with the colour here. So you can turn it whatever colour you want, and each colour might have a different effect on the scene itself. We're going to make sure that the light itself is invisible and the reflection is also invisible, so we can't see it. And we're also going to lower down that intensity, so it's just a kind of nice glow. Now at the moment we've got this kind of like reddish glow, but I think I kind of want it to be a nice sort of dark blue tone. So let's start somewhere around there. I think that's kind of looking quite nice in the scene. We're getting this nice dark blue light cast on the surface of our object. It might be that we want to sort of move it slightly backwards just to give more light to the front of the object as well. So you can move these around to add the light wherever you think it's best suited to the scene. I think somewhere around here maybe. It's looking quite nice. So that's giving us this nice dark blue tint. It might also be that you want to kind of create another light on the other side of the scene. I'm just going to draw this one out here. And we could give this a different colour. So perhaps in this one we'll call this environment 2. And then for this light, let's make this a sort of reddish tone. Lower it right down. Turn off the kind of invisibility as well. And maybe even lower for this. I'm going to put this on a kind of 3 intensity. And there we're getting this kind of nice two-tone lighting going on in our scene as well. Maybe we make this one a little bit higher. So you see now we're getting this kind of nice atmospheric lighting, and really depending on the lighting you want in your scene, you can turn the colours of these to match different colours. It might be that perhaps this one wants to be more orange to match the sky. So you can just go back to your lighting panel, find the particular light you want to change, and just adjust the colours to suit whatever sort of particular feeling or kind of atmosphere you're looking to get from that. But I think for this one, let's keep it as a red light for now in this piece. So that was just a quick video tutorial on how to add in these artificial lights into your scene to create more drama and atmospheric lighting in there. I hope you found this video useful, and in the next video we're going to be adding in some characters and figures into this scene to start to populate the view with a few more people. So thank you for watching, and look forward to seeing you in the next video.